Autumn 1881. Sable Mesa, New Mexico Territory. The horizon burned with the last embers of daylight, a copper smear across the desert. The wind dragged dust over the ground like a veil, whistling through the empty posts of the unfinished railroad. Inside his weathered ranch house, Eamon Ridley stood by the window, boots sunk deep in mud cracked from too many dry years. The air smelled of ash and iron. His daughter June hummed softly near the stove, braiding the string of her worn doll. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled. Not the kind that brought rain, but the kind that reminded a man how small he was. In that sound, Eamon heard something else, memory or guilt, buried deep beneath his silence. Night came fast. The wind howled through the gaps in the barn door. Then, hoofbeats. One horse, slow, careful, circling the paddock. Eamon reached for the Winchester above the door, thumb resting on the lever. The rider made no sound, but the silhouette cut sharp against the lightning flash. A man in a long duster, hat low, watching. He opened the door just enough to see the outline fade into the dark. The next flash revealed only dust. The hoofprints led nowhere. June appeared beside him, her small hand clutching his sleeve. "Pa," she whispered, "who'd ride out this far after sundown?" "Someone with no good reason," Eamon said. He stepped onto the porch, rain beginning to fall in thick, slanted lines. Something glinted near the trough. A matchbook, half-soaked, marked with the initials M and W, Meridian and Western Railroad. He turned it over. The smell of sulfur and tobacco clung to his fingers, same brand used by Silas Crowther, the company man who'd visited last month, talking about progress, about land. Inside, Alma sat by the fire, her wet dress clinging to her knees, daughter asleep on her lap. The glow caught the side of her face, calm, but too still. Eamon's gaze fell to the bundle beside her boots. The corner of a survey map peeked out, edges stained with rain. "You travelin' alone?" he asked, voice low. "Only one way left to go," she said. He hesitated, studying her. "That map of yours, company work?" "It was my husband's," she said quietly. "Pitch from first." "He's gone now." Eamon said nothing. The sound of rain filled the silence between them. Outside, lightning struck close enough to rattle the windows. He shut the shutters, set the rifle back on its hook. June watched him from the hearth. "She's scared," June said. "She'll sleep in the barn," Eamon replied. "There's snakes out there." "Then she'll keep the fire close." When he handed Alma an old blanket, their hands didn't touch, but something passed between them. The quiet recognition of people who'd lost more than they could name. Later, when the wind settled into a steady hiss, Eamon stepped outside again. The rain had turned the yard into a sea of mud. He bent down, picked up another piece of paper blown against the fence, a torn corner of the same survey map, with lines drawn through his property in red ink. Someone had marked it for reclamation. Behind him, the barn light flickered. He could hear Paloma's faint cough. Alma's soft voice murmuring to her child in Spanish. Something about home, about ghosts. Eamon crushed the damp paper in his hand. "Not this land," he muttered. The next morning the sun rose dull and heavy. The mud steamed, smelling of smoke and burned hay. Down the trail a horse approached, polished saddle, gray suit, black gloves. Silas Crowther dismounted with a politician's smile. "Fine morning, Mr. Ridley," he called. "Hope last night's storm didn't do too much harm." "Storms come and go," Eamon said. "The land stays." Crowther's grin tightened. "For now. The company's expanding the line eastward. We'll need a portion of your property. I'm here to make a fair offer." "I'm not sellin'." Crowther's eyes flicked to the barn, to the faint outline of a woman's dress behind the door. "You've got company. Hope she's not filling your head with bad advice." Eamon's hand rested near his belt, not on the gun, but close enough. "She's just passing through." Crowther tipped his hat. "Let's hope she keeps going." As Crowther rode away, Eamon noticed the mud on the man's boots, same dust color as the prints from last night. June came running from the house, breathless. "Pa, she was looking at your boundary stones again." Eamon turned toward the barn. Through the half-open door, Alma stood with the map spread on a hay bale, tracing the lines with her finger. She looked up, met his eyes, then folded the paper fast. The wind shifted, carrying the distant whistle of a train. Somewhere in that sound was a promise and a threat. End of Part 1. The Line Beneath the Dust. To be continued. Morning crawled slow across Sable Mesa, stretching light through the cracks in the barn boards. The storm had left the air sharp, smelling of wet cedar and smoke. Inside, Alma Reyes sat on a bale of hay, her daughter Paloma still asleep under a horse blanket too big for her. She brushed a strand of hair from the girl's forehead, whispering words in Spanish, half prayer, half promise. Outside, Eamon Ridley forked hay into the trough, every movement heavy and deliberate, like a man trying to convince himself that routine still meant peace. He glanced at the barn door. The woman hadn't left. Most didn't stay past sunrise. "Pa, she's making coffee." June's voice cut through the quiet. Eamon looked toward the porch. Alma stood at the stove, hair tied back, sleeves rolled. The smell of roasted beans drifted through the air. She poured a cup and set it near him without meeting his eyes. "I found it in your cupboard," she said. "Ain't been opened in months." "You should change that," Alma said softly. "Silence can make a man old before his time." June climbed onto the fence rail, watching. "She talks fancy," the girl whispered, "like the ladies in town." "Then she don't belong here," Eamon muttered. The morning settled into a strange rhythm. Alma feeding the chickens, June trailing her with endless questions, Paloma drawing shapes in the dust. Eamon repaired a fence post, but his gaze kept drifting to the barn, where Alma bent over a map spread across the hay. He recognized the company stamp again, Meridian and Western Railroad. He wiped his hands and walked over. "You still carrying that?" "I'm trying to understand what it's worth." "Worth?" His voice hardened. You showing company property around here could get you shot. I'm not with them, she said. Not anymore. Eamon studied her face, the steadiness of her eyes, the faint scar near her jaw. You worked for 'em? I copied numbers, drew lines on paper. She folded the Pahamon map carefully. Lines that took people's homes. For a moment, only the horses breathed. Eamon stepped closer, voice low. You mark my land? No, she said, but someone did. A long silence stretched. The barn creaked with the wind. Then June appeared carrying a lump of chalk. Look what Paloma found, Pa. She'd written crooked letters across the door. J plus P equals sisters. Alma smiled for the first time. Small, unsure, but real. Eamon turned away before his own mouth betrayed him. That afternoon, the desert returned to heat. The sky shimmered pale gold. Alma hung laundry by the fence, the white cloth snapping in the breeze. Eamon fixed the wagon wheel nearby. You plan on staying long? He asked, not looking up. Only till the dust settles. Out here, dust never settles. Maybe it's not the land that's restless. He almost smiled. Almost. Later, when the sun fell low, June ran to the well and pointed west. Someone's out there. Through the shimmer, a lone figure on horseback moved slow near the boundary stones. Same dark duster, same wide hat. Alma's hand tightened around the rope line. Eamon took his rifle and strode toward the rise. The rider turned away, vanishing behind a dune before he could aim. He knelt by the stone marker, one of the old survey posts. Something about it was off. The ground had been disturbed. He brushed the dirt aside. The number carved into the rock didn't match the record he'd memorized from the sale deed. When he returned, Alma stood by the barn door, holding the folded map tight. It's the same mark, isn't it? She said. Yeah. He studied her. How'd you know? Because they changed mine too. The wind rose, whirling grit between them. You should tell me what you're running from, he said. A grave, she answered simply, and the men who dug it. That night, he couldn't sleep. The whistle of the distant train echoed like a ghost through the valley. Inside the barn, Alma's lantern flickered. She was sketching again. The red line of the railroad bleeding through his property like a wound. June stirred in her bedroll near the stove, whispering to her doll. She's fixing something, Pa. I can feel it. Eamon didn't answer. He sat by the window, the rifle across his knees, staring into the dark. The desert had gone still, but in the quiet, he heard a new sound. Faint scraping, like metal against stone near the western fence. He rose, heart thudding, and stepped onto the porch. The moon broke through the clouds just long enough to reveal a distant spark. A man's lantern, moving slow along his boundary, end of part 2, the map and the grave. To be continued. By dusk, the wind had changed again. Warm, restless, carrying the scent of something burning far off. Eamon Ridley leaned his hammer against the fence post and sniffed the air. It wasn't lightning or campfire smoke. This was grass fire, close and fast. He looked toward the barn. June was inside feeding the hens, and Alma Reyes had just hung the day's washing on the line. Then came the sound, a low crackle, then a roar. The southern field glowed orange under the rising moon. "Fire!" June shouted. Eamon grabbed the bucket, shouting back, "Get the horses loose!" They ran, Alma barefoot through the dust, June dragging the water pail half her size. The heat whipped across their faces as they threw bucket after bucket at the flames. Sparks leapt like wild stars. Paloma coughed, eyes stinging. Alma pulled her close, wrapping her coat around the child. Eamon's voice cut through the smoke. "Wind's turning north. We push it back from the barn. Hand me that shovel." Alma didn't hesitate. For nearly an hour, they fought it. Water, dirt, anything that would hold. The fire hissed and spat, then finally died, leaving a circle of black ash where the grass once grew. Their skin shone with sweat and soot. The air trembled with leftover heat. Eamon dropped to one knee, breathing hard. "Ain't no natural fire starts that clean," he muttered. "Somebody lit it." June stood nearby, face streaked with ash. "You think it was the man last night?" Eamon looked toward the ridge, jaw tight. "I think it's someone wants us gone." Alma knelt beside him, holding out a piece of charred wood. Carved into it was a faint mark, the letters M.W. Her voice steady, almost resigned. "Meridian and Western. They've started burning what they can't buy." They walked the perimeter at dawn. Near the west boundary, under the soot and broken earth, Eamon's boot struck something solid, a stone marker, old and half-buried. He brushed the dirt away and saw the carved number. 228, he whispered. "It should say 231, Alma said, unfolding her damp map, the corner trembling in the breeze. Pitch first. "That's 3 acres moved north." He stared at her. "They moved the damn mounds." "They moved the world," Alma said quietly. For a long while neither spoke. The morning light spilled gold over the charred ground, glinting on the stone like a headstone for the living. Back at the house, June poked at a lump of burnt grass with a stick. "Will it grow back?" she asked. Alma knelt beside her. "If the roots are deep enough." "You sound like Ma used to," June said softly. The words hung there, quiet and heavy. Eamon turned away before the ache could show. Later, a horse approached, a paint mare with beadwork reins. Maya Nez, the DNA healer from the reservation, dismounted and tied the reins slow, her eyes scanning the smoke line. "Your fire reached the ridge," she said. "Smoke told me the wind carried wrong." Eamon wiped his brow. "You think it's the company?" Maya knelt by the scorched stone, tracing the number with her finger. "They did the same to my people's grazing land. Shifted markers, then brought soldiers to call us trespassers." Alma held out the map. "You know these numbers?" "Too well," Maya nodded. "This pattern, it's the hand of the same man who drew our lines crooked. A white engineer named Ortega." Alma froze. Her breath caught. Eamon noticed. You know that name. Once, she whispered. Maya rose, dusting her palms. Canyon Espejo. That's where they hide their dead work. Men buried with no prayers. You find truth there. You find ghosts. Eamon frowned. That canyon's a half-day ride. Truth always is, Maya said, mounting her horse again. When she rode off, silence settled. Eamon turned to Alma. You gonna tell me what you know about Ortega? Not yet. Then you best start soon, he said, because whoever burned this place, they'll come back for the rest. As the sun bled out behind the hills, June gathered the last unburnt flowers by the fence and laid them near the scorched marker. What's that for? Eamon asked. For whoever used to live here, she said. That night, Alma dreamed of train whistles and red dirt. In her dream, a man stood beside her, his hands black with soot, his eyes gray like Eamon's. He whispered one word. Espejo. She woke with a start. The wind outside had died. The desert was too quiet, as if holding its breath. From the porch, Eamon watched a lantern flicker near the ridge, too steady to be wind, too soon to be dawn. He reached for his rifle. End of Part 3. The Fire and the Name. To be continued. The desert wore its silence like an old scar. By mid-morning, the ashes from the fire had cooled, leaving the earth a dull gray. Eamon Ridley stood beside the burned fence line, hat low, boot pressing a trail of soot. Behind him, Alma Reyes hung wet sheets to dry, her fingers trembling slightly, though the air was warm. Every gust carried a whisper from the night before, wood cracking, horses crying, and the smell of something gone wrong. Down the slope came a rider, small but steady. Maya Nez dismounted before Eamon could call out, her braid heavy with dust, her eyes sharp as obsidian. She carried a leather pouch of herbs and a small knife carved from deer bone. You lost more than grass, she said, kneeling to touch the blackened earth. This is where the wind turns false. Someone fed it. You mean arson? Eamon crossed his arms. I mean intent. Maya looked up. June ran from the porch, waving. Miss Maya, you came back. Maya smiled faintly. I bring medicine, little one. Smoke like this poisons more than lungs. Alma came closer, cautious. You saw who did it? Only the trail they left. Wagon ruts heading south toward Canyon Espejo. That's railroad ground, Eamon frowned. Used to be sacred ground, Maya replied. Now it's where men vanish. Eamon exchanged a glance with Alma. You think it's tied to the markers? Maya's eyes drifted to the stone he'd dug out. Every time they move a stone, someone disappears. Sometimes a worker, sometimes a farmer. Always someone with less power than the man drawing the map. Alma's hand tightened on the map she held. You've seen the markings? Maya nodded. A circle with the letters SC. Same hand wrote across my people's grazing fields. Alma hesitated. SC. She stopped. Eamon caught it. Crowther. For a long moment, only the wind spoke. Maya rose, dusting off her skirt. There's a place in the canyon where the dirt Smells of iron. They buried something there. Maybe truth. Eamon looked toward the distant cliffs. How far? Half a day by horse if you don't get caught. June tugged Alma's sleeve. What's in the canyon? Alma crouched beside her. Ghosts, maybe. But ghosts can tell stories if you listen right. The girl frowned. I don't want to listen to ghosts. Then listen to the living, Maya said softly. They're harder to believe. They ate in silence that noon. The ranch felt smaller, the sky heavier. Eamon's thoughts circled back to the burned grass, to the moved marker, to the name Crowther. He'd seen that look before. Men pretending to build progress while burying sins beneath it. After the meal, Alma sat by the well, staring into the bucket's reflection. Eamon joined her. You knew Ortega, he said. Her eyes stayed on the water. I did. Engineer? Yes, a good one. Too good. He found numbers that didn't match. Eamon waited. And? They made him disappear. She lifted her head. He was my husband. The words hit like a hammer on stone. The bucket chain creaked between them. I came west to find the map he finished before they killed him, she said. If I can prove the company shifted the lines, they'll hang the man who signed it. Eamon stared into the desert, jaw set. Crowther. She nodded once. SC. He rubbed a hand over his face. You should have told me. Would you have believed me? He didn't answer. Near sunset, Maya returned with a satchel of herbs and laid a single white stone on the porch rail. For luck, she said. Eamon frowned. Luck for what? For the journey you've already started. That night, a thin rain swept across the plain. Eamon couldn't sleep. From the loft came Alma's quiet sobs, muffled against the hay. Downstairs, June whispered to her doll, Pa says ghosts don't talk, he's wrong. Before dawn, Eamon saddled his horse. He looked toward the horizon, where the canyon cut the desert like an open wound. Alma stepped out, shawl around her shoulders. You're going there, she said. He nodded. You don't have to come. I already did, she replied. Behind them, the first light of morning bled through the clouds, painting the land in ash and gold. The smell of burnt grass lingered, proof that something had started and wouldn't stop until the truth showed its face. End of Part 4. The Canyon's Call. To be continued. The sun bled hard that morning, a dull red disk hanging above the mesa like a promise of reckoning. Eamon Ridley rode in front, the rifle strapped across his saddle. Behind him, Alma Reyes clung to her reins, her daughter's ribbon tied around her wrist like a talisman. Maya Nez guided them through the dry ravine, her eyes tracing the stone ridges with the quiet certainty of someone who knew how the land breathed. No one spoke for miles. The horses' hooves kicked up gray dust that clung to their clothes, to their skin. Finally, Maya raised a hand. We're close, she said. You'll smell it before you see it. The wind shifted, carrying the metallic scent of rust and decay. Eamon pulled up short, dismounted, and crouched near a patch of disturbed earth. "Tracks," he murmured. "2 wagons, heavy loads." "Company men," Maya nodded. "They came through last week." "My husband marked this place before he vanished," Alma said, her grip tightening on the rolled map under her arm. They led the horses into the canyon's throat. The walls closed in, painted with layers of ochre and soot. The echo of dripping water sounded like whispers. Eamon brushed his fingers over the rock and found a faint railroad emblem carved into it, an M and W half chipped away. "What the hell would they be doing out here?" he asked. "Digging," Maya said, "or hiding." They reached a narrow pass where the air turned colder. In the middle stood a small cairn of stones, recently built. Alma knelt, brushing away sand. Beneath the top stone lay a rusted surveyor's compass, engraved with the initials S.O. Her breath caught. Salvador Ortega. Before Eamon could answer, a gunshot cracked from the ridge. The bullet slammed into the dirt beside his boot. He dove behind a boulder, shouting, "Down!" From above, a voice rang out, sharp, drawling, familiar. "Ain't polite to dig where you don't own the dirt." Burl Kane, the company's hired gun, stood silhouetted against the sun, rifle steady, pitch first. "You folks lost?" Eamon fired back, the bullet sparking against stone. Maya flanked left, moving silent as smoke. Alma clutched the compass to her chest, whispering a name under her breath. Another shot exploded, chipping rock inches from her head. "You got one chance to ride off, Kane," Eamon shouted. "And miss the payday? Not likely." Burl laughed. He pulled a blasting cord from his saddlebag, sticks of dynamite tied together with black twine. He struck a match, the fuse hissing. "Crowther says no trespassers." Eamon aimed high and fired. The bullet hit the fuse, cutting it mid-spark. Burl cursed and ducked as the pack fell to the ground. Maya took her chance, drew her pistol, shot once. The bullet grazed Burl's shoulder. He staggered, dropped the dynamite, and tumbled down the slope. The canyon fell silent except for the echo of his fall. Eamon ran forward, kicking away the dynamite, checking the man's pulse, still breathing. He looked up at Alma. "You all right?" She nodded, shaken. "He would have buried us with them." They followed the trail Burl had come from, up a narrow path to a plateau littered with old wooden crates and scraps of canvas. There, half buried in dust, lay a shallow graveyard, crude crosses made of railroad stakes. Maya knelt, whispering something in Diné. "These are the workers. Men from my clan, Mexicans, drifters, all signed to M&W. None came home." Eamon scanned the dirt, something catching his eye. A small metal badge with the number 47 and the words Meridian and Western Survey Crew. He turned it over and found the faint engraving, S. Ortega. Alma pressed her hands to her mouth. Her knees gave out. Eamon steadied her. "He's here." She nodded through tears. "He died for a line on a map." Maya opened a leather notebook she found half buried under a beam. The pages were torn, water-stained, but still legible. "It's his field book," she said. Coordinates, measurements, notes about moving markers under orders. Eamon took it. The last line, smudged with dirt, read, "By command of SC, move ridge post 2 miles north before dawn." Alma's voice broke. "Silas Crowther." Eamon closed the book hard. "We've got our proof." Behind them came the crunch of boots on gravel. They turned. Sheriff Oakes stood at the mouth of the trail, hand resting on his revolver. "Found something interesting, Ridley?" Eamon narrowed his eyes. "You know damn well we did." Oakes extended his hand. "That notebook belongs to the county now. Evidence in an open case." Eamon didn't move. "And what happens when evidence disappears, Sheriff?" Alma stepped forward. Oakes's gaze flicked to her, then to the ridge. "I'll handle it." He pocketed the book and tipped his hat. "You all head home before someone gets hurt." As he walked away, Eamon saw the faint bulge of an envelope in the sheriff's coat, same kind Silas Crowther used for payoffs. End of Part 5. The Canyon's Dead. To be continued. The sun dipped behind Sable Mesa, leaving the town of Dry Hollow wrapped in the red haze of dusk. Eamon Ridley rode through the main street with dust on his boots and anger burning behind his silence. The sheriff's office sat like a tomb at the edge of town, its flag limp, its windows dim. Inside, Sheriff Lyle Oakes sat behind his desk, turning Salvador Ortega's notebook over in his hands, as if it were a snake he wasn't sure how to hold. Eamon pushed the door open without knocking. The hinges screamed. "Where's the book?" he demanded. Oakes didn't look up. "Safe. County evidence." "Since when's the county got a safe?" The sheriff sighed, leaning back. "You're a rancher, Ridley. You know what happens when a man kicks at hornets." "I ain't scared of hornets." "Then you're a fool." From outside came the sound of a wagon rattling by, iron wheels grinding against the dirt. Alma Reyes waited across the street, shawl drawn tight, watching the light flicker through the office window. Every few seconds she glanced toward the saloon where Silas Crowther's black horse was tied, slick with sweat, as if it had come straight from the canyon. Inside, Oakes opened a drawer and pulled out a small envelope. He set it on the desk between them. "Crowther left this," he said. Eamon's jaw tightened. "A bribe?" Oakes's eyes flicked up, tired and hollow. "A reminder." "Of what?" "That there's men in this town who'd rather see progress than graves." Eamon leaned forward. "You seen those graves, Sheriff? Progress don't need to bury people to move forward." Oakes rubbed his temple. "You think I don't know that?" The tension thickened. The only sound, the ticking of the wall clock and the wind sneaking through the shutters. Eamon took one step closer. "I don't give a damn what Crowther's got on you," he said. "But if you don't hand me that notebook, he'll own every inch of this county, and we'll be next in the Casson ground." Oakes looked up sharply, eyes flashing for the first time. "You think you can fight the railroad? You and some drifter woman?" Eamon's voice dropped low. "I'll fight what's in front of me. Same as always." For a long moment, neither man moved. Then Oakes exhaled and reached into his coat. But instead of the notebook, he pulled out his badge. He set it on the desk beside the envelope. "You don't understand what you're digging into," he said. "That book ties Crowther to Washington investors, the kind of men who buy judges for breakfast. If I touch it, I hang. If you touch it, you burn." Eamon stared at the badge. Then maybe it's time someone burned. Outside, a train whistle cut through the air, long and mournful. Oakes flinched. "He's at the saloon," he muttered. "Crowther. He wanted to make sure I delivered the message." "What message?" "Keep your land out of his way, or next time it won't be grass they burn." Eamon turned and walked out, the door slamming behind him. Across the street, Alma was already moving toward him, reading his expression before he spoke. "He's bought," Eamon said. Alma's voice was quiet. "They always are." They started back toward the horses, but the sound of boots on wood stopped them. Crowther stepped out of old Jed's saloon, hat tilted, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Evenin', Ridley," he drawled. "Heard you been digging where you shouldn't." Eamon stopped halfway across the street. "You got blood on your boots, Crowther. Doesn't wash easy." Crowther smirked. "Blood dries. Money don't." He tossed back the drink, handed the glass to Jed, and added, "Tell your lady friend she's trespassing on borrowed time." Alma's eyes went cold. "You killed him," she said. Crowther turned, feigning surprise. "Who?" "My husband." He smiled thinly. "Lot of men die out here, ma'am. I can't keep count." Eamon's hand twitched toward his revolver, but Alma caught his wrist. Crowther saw it, laughed, and walked away, boots clicking against the wooden planks. Later that night, under the flicker of a single oil lamp, Alma packed her few things into a satchel. June stood in the doorway, barefoot and quiet. "You're leaving?" the girl asked. Alma tied the strap tight. "It's safer if we go." June's voice cracked. "But you promised to teach me to read the big words." Alma froze, then knelt and brushed June's hair from her face. "Big words can wait. Right now, we need to learn the word survive." From the doorway, Eamon watched, jaw tight. "You don't have to run," he said. Alma shook her head. "You can't shoot the wind, Eamon. It's already everywhere." She took Paloma's hand and stepped into the night. The ranch felt emptier with every footstep that faded down the trail. Eamon stood by the window, watching the lantern light disappear into the desert dark. Outside, the wind carried a train's distant hum, a sound like iron against bone. He whispered to himself, "If she's right, the wind's already picked its side." End of Part 6. The Wind's Side. To be continued. Dawn came pale and dry, painting the desert in bruised shades of rose and gold. Alma Reyes led her horse down the narrow trail that wound between the rocks, her daughter Paloma half asleep in the saddle behind her. The wind carried the faint smell of iron again, or maybe it was just the memory of Canyon Espejo still clinging to her skin. She didn't look back. She'd already buried too many ghosts in one place. Every hoofstep stirred dust that rose and fell like sighs. Ahead, the horizon shimmered with heat, though the morning was cool. Alma's mind replayed the last look Eamon Ridley had given her, part warning, part ache. He'd said nothing when she left, but she knew he'd follow. Men like Eamon didn't let storms pass quietly. Paloma stirred. "Mama?" "Yes, mi amor." "Why we leavin' Mr. Ridley's?" Alma hesitated. "Because sometimes good men live in bad places." "Is he bad?" "No," Alma whispered. "He's just tied to things that burn." They stopped by an abandoned windmill at midday. Alma drew her worn map from her satchel and spread it on a flat stone. The paper trembled in the wind. She traced the red lines with her finger, the railroad's mark. And then, just below, a name written in faded ink, S. Ortega. "That's Papa's name, huh?" Paloma peered over. Alma nodded. "He drew these lines. Thought they meant something honest." "Did they?" She looked out at the endless land. "They meant a grave." Paloma's hand brushed the edge of the compass she wore around her neck. Her father's. The needle quivered, pointing not north, but toward a low ridge on the horizon. Alma frowned. "That's the canyon," she murmured. "He's still leading us." Meanwhile, miles behind, Eamon rode hard along the ridge, following their faint tracks. Maya Nez rode beside him, wrapped in her blanket despite the heat. "You should have let her go," Maya said. Eamon shook his head. "Crowther's got men combing the trails. If they find her before I'll do." "She's not yours to save," Maya replied. Eamon's eyes hardened. "Maybe not, but she's under my sky now." They rode until the tracks split, one leading east toward the flats, another veering north toward the ridge. Eamon crouched, studying the prints. "Two horses, one lighter load," he said. "They're heading north." Maya looked that way. North's where the dead whisper loudest. Eamon gave her a look. "Then we best keep our ears open." By late afternoon, Alma reached a cluster of abandoned mining huts. She tethered the horse and helped Paloma down. The girl's face was pale from the ride. Inside the largest hut, Alma found an old stove, a cot, and a wall covered in soot. She brushed it with her sleeve and froze. There, faint beneath the grime, were words scratched in Spanish. "No cambies la línea." "Don't move the line." Her breath caught. She traced the letters with trembling fingers. "He was here," she whispered, "before they killed him." She sank onto the cot, memories flooding back. Salvador Ortega, laughing at the kitchen table back in El Paso, his hands stained with ink, his eyes full of impossible faith. He'd told her, "A line on a map can mean freedom or a coffin. Depends who's holding the pen." Paloma watched quietly. "Mama, what's it say?" "It says your papa tried to stop them." Outside, thunder rumbled far off. Dust lifted along the trail. Horses. Alma peered through a crack in the wall. 2 riders. She recognized one even before the wind brought his voice. "Alma!" Eamon dismounted, stepping into the fading light. His face was streaked with trail dust, his jaw unshaven, but his eyes held something steadier than anger, resolve. "You shouldn't have come," she said. He shrugged. "Could say the same." "You don't owe me." "Maybe not. But I owe myself to see this through." Maya appeared behind him, scanning the horizon. "They're following you," she warned. "Crowther's men." Alma's eyes darted to Paloma. "We can't fight them here." Eamon shook his head. "No, but we can make 'em follow the wrong trail." They worked fast. Eamon scattered horse tracks leading south. Maya lit a small fire of sage to mask their scent. Alma gathered her maps, stuffing them into her satchel. Then she paused, pulling one page aside, the one with her husband's signature. She folded it neatly and pressed it into Eamon's hand. "If I don't make it," she said, "you keep this safe." Eamon met her gaze. "Don't talk like that." "I'm not talking fear. I'm talking truth." Thunder rolled again, closer this time. Eamon glanced toward the ridge. "We ride before the storm covers us." They saddled up. Paloma clung to her mother's waist as lightning forked in the distance. The first drops of rain hissed against the dust, turning it to mud. Behind them, 3 riders appeared at the canyon's mouth, silhouettes dark against the lightning flash. Eamon raised his rifle, but Alma grabbed his arm. "No shots," she said. "Not till we know who they serve." The storm broke wide, rain hammering the land, thunder swallowing every sound but the horses' frantic breathing. The world turned to shadow and firelight. Through the storm, Alma shouted something Eamon almost didn't hear. "My husband's notebook. It's not the only proof. Crowther kept a ledger in his office." Eamon turned sharply. "You sure?" She nodded. "Names, payments, land transfers. He called it the silent deal." Lightning split the sky again, revealing the riders closing in, one of them unmistakable, even through the rain. Burl Kane, wounded arm bandaged, rage in his eyes. Eamon shouted, "Go!" End of Part 7. The Silent Deal. To be continued. The rain lasted through the night, carving new rivers into the desert floor. By dawn, the storm had gone east, leaving Sable Mesa drowned in silence. Eamon Ridley, soaked to the bone, knelt beside the fire pit outside the old mining hut. The flames hissed in the damp air, coughing smoke. Beside him, Maya Nez cleaned her rifle, eyes scanning the ridgeline. Alma Reyes sat nearby, holding Paloma wrapped in a blanket. The girl's breath steady at last. No one spoke for a while. The only sound was the crackle of the fire and the distant drip of rainwater from the eaves. Finally, Eamon said, "You mentioned a ledger." Alma looked up, face pale but certain. "Crowther keeps records for everything. Payments, contracts, the names of every man he's bought. He calls it the silent deal. He hides it in the safe at the company office, back in Dry Hollow." Eamon frowned. "That office has got guards. Pinkerton men." "I know," Alma said. "But the proof's there. If we get it to Santa Fe, they can hang him." Maya tied her rifle strap tight and stood. "Law in Santa Fe doesn't care for our kind. They'll hang the messenger first." Eamon met her gaze. Then we'll make the message too loud to ignore. He kicked sand over the fire and stood. We'll go at dusk. I'll talk to Sheriff Oaks first. The man's bought, Alma scoffed. Eamon shook his head. Maybe, but he ain't rotten clean through. By afternoon, they reached Dry Hollow. The town was quieter than usual, the streets lined with fresh mud and half-built storefronts stamped with the M&W logo. The train station gleamed at the edge of town like a wound dressed in gold. Old Jed stood on the porch of his saloon, whittling a piece of mesquite. When he saw Eamon dismount, he spat a stream of tobacco into the dust. Thought you'd be halfway to the border by now, Ridley. Eamon tightened his reins. You still keep ledgers for your debts, Jed? Jed smirked. Depends on who's asking. Eamon lowered his voice. Pitch first. I'm asking for justice. Crowther's ledger. You know where he keeps it. Jed's knife paused mid-carve. The wind carried a long pause between them. After a beat, he said, You playin' with fire, son. That ledger's a hang rope for half this town. Sheriff knows it. So does Crowther. Then tell me where, Eamon said. Jed looked around, then leaned in. He moves it every week, but tonight, it'll be in the freight wagon, heading north on the supply run. 2 guards, maybe 3. Leaves before sunrise. He straightened, eyes narrowing. You never heard that from me. Eamon nodded once. Appreciate it. Jed muttered, Don't. Some truths ain't worth living through. That evening, Alma stood with Eamon behind the barn near the sheriff's office. The lantern light spilled from Oakes's window, flickering like guilt itself. You sure about this? She asked. Eamon checked his revolver. Not sure of anything lately. He knocked once on the back door. After a long pause, it opened. Sheriff Oaks stood there, shirt half unbuttoned, eyes heavy. What in hell are you doing here? He whispered. Jed says Crowther's moving the ledger north tonight, Eamon said. We're taking it. Oaks looked from Eamon to Alma, then sighed. You'll die for nothing. Eamon replied, Maybe, but I won't live for less. The sheriff rubbed his face, then reached for his gun belt, not to aim, but to hand it over. If anyone asks, I didn't see you. Alma blinked. Why help us now? Oaks stared at her. Because I've spent my life guarding the wrong side of the fence. He turned away, voice low. The wagon leaves the yard at dawn. Follow the dry creek north. You'll catch it before the ridge. They rode out under a moonless sky, hooves sinking into soft earth. Maya led, eyes sharp in the dark. The land was quiet except for the hum of insects and the distant whistle of the train, faint as breath. Eamon broke the silence. You ever think about what happens after? Alma glanced over. After what? When this is done. When Crowther's gone. She smiled sadly. People like us don't get after. Just more road. Ahead, the ridge came into view, black against the horizon. They stopped, tying the horses to a low juniper. In the distance, lanterns bobbed, the freight wagon trundling slow through the mud. Eamon checked his rifle. 2 guards up front, 1 on the back. We wait for the slope. Maya nodded. I'll take the rear. Alma took a deep breath. And when we have it? Eamon's reply was quiet, certain. Then we show them what silence costs. The wagon drew closer. The lead guard coughed, muttering about the rain. Eamon counted the seconds between the wheel creaks. Then he gave a signal, 2 taps against his saddle horn. Maya moved first, silent as shadow. Her rifle barked once, dropping the rear guard without a scream. Eamon swung up from the ditch, tackling the driver. The horses reared, the wagon veered, and the world turned to chaos and shouts. Alma climbed onto the step, yanking open the back gate. Inside, crates of ledgers, papers, and gold glinting in the lantern light. She reached for a leather-bound book stamped M&W, just as a gun cocked behind her. Burl Kane's voice drawled from the dark. Told you folks you should have stayed out of business you don't own. Eamon turned, gun halfway raised. End of Part 8. The Silent Deal. To be continued. By noon the next day, the sun was merciless again, the kind that made the desert shimmer like a lie told too long. Eamon Ridley rode behind Alma Reyes and Maya Nez, the burned ledger tucked in his saddlebag. Dust trailed behind them in a faint golden cloud. Every mile felt like a question with no safe answer. At the ridge above Dry Hollow, Maya pulled her horse to a stop and raised a hand. Smoke, she said. They saw it. A thin gray line twisting from the east, from the direction of the railroad yard. Eamon narrowed his eyes. Crowther's burning evidence. Alma clenched her reins. Then we ride faster. But the ride brought no comfort. By the time they reached the lower basin, the sound of metal and shouts carried on the wind. Pinkerton men, armed and methodical, scouring the road for them. The desert trembled beneath their horses. Eamon motioned for silence and led them off the main trail, cutting through a patch of dry sage toward an old chapel ruin. The stone walls leaned like tired men, the bell tower half collapsed, its rusted bell swaying with every gust. They dismounted inside the courtyard. Alma drew the ledger out and opened it on the altar stone. Its pages were charred, but the ink still bled through. Look, she said, tapping a list of names. Contracts, payments, land deeds, and here, she paused, breath catching, Salvador Ortega, signed off as deceased 6 months before the Espejo survey. Eamon frowned. They declared him dead before they killed him. Maya's hand trembled as she turned the next page. Her eyes froze on a line near the bottom. Her voice broke. Nez, Elias, that's my uncle. Eamon leaned closer. The entry read, transferred to Espejo work camp, missing, presumed deceased. Maya swallowed hard. He's not dead. My mother said the ground never took him. A sound broke the stillness. The faint ring of a horse bell carried on the wind, not far. Eamon stiffened. We're found. They grabbed their things, scattering toward the ruin's back gate. But before they reached it, gunfire cracked through the silence. A bullet shattered the altar stone beside Alma's hand. She pulled Paloma behind her, heart hammering. Voices shouted from outside. Bring 'em out! Crowther wants the woman alive. Eamon took position by the doorway, firing 2 quick shots. A man fell. Another ducked behind the well. Maya slipped along the wall and whispered, 3 riders, 1 with a badge. Oakes. Sure enough, Sheriff Oakes emerged from behind the lead rider, hat pulled low, revolver steady but aimed down. "Eamon," he called, "you got what you wanted. Now hand it over before everyone dies for it." Eamon's voice was tight. "You switched sides again?" Oakes shook his head. "Never had one to start with." Behind him, Silas Crowther rode into view, flanked by 4 Pinkertons, all clean coats and cold eyes. The man's smile was that same politician's grin, polished, poisonous. "Well, Mr. Ridley," he called, "you've been busy." Alma stepped out just enough for her voice to carry. "You'll pay for what you did to my husband." Crowther's grin didn't fade. "Ma'am, your husband was a thief. He stole company property, maps, tools, secrets. I just enforced the law." Eamon spat into the dirt. "You write your own laws." Crowther dismounted, walking slow, boots crunching over stone. "That's the benefit of progress, son. The future doesn't wait for the stubborn." While he spoke, Maya's eyes darted past him, to the bell tower. A faint glint of metal flashed there. Someone moved among the shadows. A man, thin but alive, holding a rusted rifle. Her breath caught. "Elias," she whispered. Her uncle, not dead, not gone, watching from above. Before she could speak, Crowther raised his hand. "Bring the girl," he ordered. 2 Pinkertons moved toward Alma. Eamon stepped forward, gun drawn, firing. Chaos erupted. The bell above them began to ring, wild and broken, every toll shattering the air. Elias fired from the tower, dropping one of Crowther's men. Dust filled the air, smoke curling from gunfire. Paloma screamed as Alma pulled her toward the back wall. Eamon tackled Crowther behind the horses, both men grappling in the dirt. Then, silence. Time 700 PEMS. When the smoke cleared, Crowther was gone, vanished into the haze. The Pinkertons lay scattered, some dead, some fleeing. The bell still swayed, moaning in the wind. Eamon turned to where Alma and Paloma had been, only dust and footprints. His chest clenched. "Alma." No answer. Only the faint jingle of a small horse bell fading into the desert. Maya ran to him, blood streaked across her cheek. "They took her," she said. "They've got the child, too." Eamon's jaw set. "Then we hunt." The sound of the bell carried farther now, blending with the whisper of the wind. Part warning, part call. Cliffhanger summary. Crowther strikes back, ambushing the group in the ruins of the old chapel. The bell tolls as betrayal and revelation collide. Elias Nez, long thought dead, returns from the shadows. Amid the chaos, Alma and her daughter are taken, leaving Eamon and Maya surrounded by ghosts, vengeance, and the tolling promise of retribution. The desert, once silent, now rings with war. End of Part 10, The Tolling Bell. To be continued. Dawn found Eamon Ridley and Maya Nez already in the saddle. riding hard along the broken trail toward the northern flats. The air was sharp and cold, the horizon blurred with sand. Every hoofbeat thudded with urgency. Somewhere ahead, Alma Reyes and her daughter were prisoners of Silas Crowther's men. The faint jingle of a horse bell, the same sound that had haunted Eamon's dreams, carried on the wind like a trail of guilt. They rode in silence for miles. When the sun crested the ridge, Maya pointed toward a cluster of canvas tents at the base of a rocky bluff. "There," she said, "that's where they'll be, where they laid the false markers." From their vantage point, they could see movement below. Horses tethered near supply wagons, Pinkerton guards pacing, and Silas Crowther himself beside a canvas table spread with charts. Burl Kane, arm still bandaged, leaned against a crate, pistol at his side. In front of them, Alma tied to a fence post, Paloma sitting close, quiet but defiant. Maya squinted. He's using her as bait. Eamon checked his rifle. Then he's gonna choke on it. They crept down the slope, using the shadows of boulders for cover. Eamon counted 6 men, too many for a frontal charge, but they didn't have time for careful. Paloma was humming something soft, a lullaby Alma used to sing, the tune trembling in the wind. Down below, Crowther's voice cut through the quiet. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Mrs. Reyes. You hand me that ledger, and I'll let the girl walk free. You have my word." Alma met his gaze. "Your word's worth less than the dust you stand on." Crowther smiled thinly. "I built this dust into an empire." Eamon's jaw tightened. He whispered, "We end this now." They moved, quick and low. Maya took position behind a wagon, Eamon flanking from the right. He caught Burl's outline first, the man lighting a cigarette, muttering about bad luck. Eamon leveled his rifle and called out, "Drop it, Burl." The cigarette froze mid-air. Burl turned slow, eyes narrow. "Ridley." "Let her go," Eamon said, stepping from behind the rock. Burl laughed. "Pitch." "You never learn, do you? Always standing on land that ain't yours." Eamon's tone went cold. "You don't even know whose side you're on." Burl's smirk faltered. "Just a beat." From the bluff above, Maya fired first, a clean shot that shattered the lantern on the wagon. The camp exploded in panic. Horses reared, men shouted. Alma threw herself sideways, wrenching against the rope until it snapped. Paloma darted toward the crates, clutching her mother's skirts. Crowther drew his pistol and fired toward the bluff. "Kill them both!" Eamon charged from cover, bullets whistling past. He slammed into Burl, the two crashing into the dirt in a whirl of fists and mud. Burl grabbed for the revolver at his belt, but Eamon's knee pinned his arm. "Where's your loyalty now?" Eamon snarled. Burl spat blood. "To whoever pays for it." Eamon pressed the barrel of his rifle to Burl's chest. "Then I'm paying you with mercy." He pulled the trigger, not to fire, but to eject the cartridge. The shell fell into the dirt beside Burl's face. "You're done." Then he shoved the man back, turning toward Alma. Crowther was retreating toward the ridge, clutching a leather satchel, the ledger and his contracts. He fired wildly over his shoulder, missing every shot. Alma ducked, grabbed Paloma, and ran toward Eamon. Maya moved down the slope, smoke curling from her rifle. "He's running for the false boundary," she called. Eamon mounted, spurring his horse after him. The ground blurred beneath them as Crowther fled across the plain, the wind tearing at his coat. Ahead lay a line of white stones, the fake markers Meridian and Western had buried to claim the land. Crowther reached them first, stumbling off his horse. "This is company ground," he shouted, pointing at the stones. Eamon dismounted, walking toward him, gun steady. "Not anymore." Crowther backed up, his heel catching on loose dirt. The bluff edge crumbled behind him, revealing a sinkhole, the shallow grave of the surveyors buried years before. Eamon's voice was steady. "You moved the line to bury the truth." Crowther's hand shook around his pistol. "You think you can change history with bullets?" Eamon's eyes narrowed. "Not with bullets, with the ground itself." Before Crowther could fire, Sheriff Oakes appeared on horseback at the ridge above, shouting, "Drop the gun, Silas!" Crowther turned, and that hesitation was enough. The ground beneath him gave way. He slipped, dirt sliding, one hand grabbing at a stone marker as it toppled with him. Eamon lunged forward, catching his wrist just in time. For a heartbeat, they hung there, one man clinging to the other above the bones of the past. Crowther's voice cracked. "Don't let me fall." Eamon's grip tightened. "Give me the satchel." Crowther hesitated, eyes wide with terror. Finally, he thrust it upward. Eamon grabbed it, the ledger inside. But when he looked down again, Crowther was gone, swallowed by the earth he'd corrupted. The echo of the collapse rolled through the canyon like thunder. Maya rode up with Alma and Paloma close behind. The girl was crying softly, clutching her mother's arm. Eamon handed the satchel to Oakes, who dismounted, eyes full of regret. "Guess that's justice," the sheriff said quietly. Eamon looked at the hole. "No, that's consequence." They stood in silence as the wind shifted, scattering dust across the exposed stones. The true boundary markers, unearthed at last. Maya knelt and pressed her palm to the ground. "The land remembers," she said. "Now it can breathe again." End of Part 11. The True Line. To be continued. The days after the fall of Silas Crowther passed in strange quiet. The desert, once brittle and scorched, seemed to breathe again. The fires had gone out. The graves at Canyon Espejo were finally marked. And for the first time in years, the wind carried something softer than ash. At dawn, Eamon Ridley stood by the ridge where the false boundary stones still jutted from the dirt, half buried, half reclaimed. The sky was pale gold, stretched thin like worn parchment. He lifted one of the broken markers and set it upright again, pressing it into the damp earth until it stood steady. Behind him, the sound of children's laughter drifted from the homestead, light, human, undeservedly free. "Almost looks right," said Sheriff Oakes, stepping beside him. He looked older now, his coat too big, his badge dulled. "Almost," Eamon said. "But some lines don't need redrawing, just need remembering." The sheriff nodded, staring toward the far hills where the railroad still gleamed, unfinished, glinting like a wound that refused to close. Santa Fe sent word. The case is filed, the ledger's safe. Crowther's name'll stand for more than gold now. Eamon brushed dust from his palms. World'll forget him soon enough. Oakes gave a tired half-smile. Maybe, but not you. Eamon watched as the wagon carrying the last of the evidence rolled out of sight. Oakes gathered his reins. Reckon I'll head north. Maybe find a place where the law still means something. If you find it, send word. Oakes grinned faintly. Don't expect mail service in heaven. He rode away into the rising sun. The land went still again. Back at the ranch, Alma Reyes hung laundry in the morning breeze. Sheets caught the light like white flags of surrender. June and Paloma chased each other between the rows, their voices rising and falling like birdsong. For the first time in a long time, laughter didn't sound like a crime. Eamon leaned against the porch post, hat in hand, watching the scene. For all the blood, for all the dirt, this quiet was what he'd been fighting for without even knowing it. Maya Nez approached from the trail, braid loose, skin bronzed by sun and peace. The DNA Council sent word. The canyon's ours again. We'll bury the men where the earth remembers their names. Eamon nodded. Seems right. You could come, say a few words. He smiled faintly. I said my piece to the wind already. It knows what to do with it. So what'll you do now? His eyes drifted toward Alma and the girls. Build. Maya smirked. Buildin's harder than fightin'. That's why it's worth doin'. She laughed softly. When the land breathes again, it forgives. Maybe it'll forgive you too. You think it can? I think it already has. She mounted. Goodbye, Ridley. Safe road, Maya. That evening, when the air cooled, Eamon walked into the barn. Light through the slats painted stripes of gold and shadow. On his workbench lay a small block of mesquite wood, smooth from years of touch, from the old fence that once divided his land from no man's land. He picked up his knife and began to carve. The blade whispered, curling shavings to the floor. The smell of fresh-cut wood filled the air, clean and alive. For a long while he said nothing. His hands worked slow, steady, like prayer. The shape took form. A ring, imperfect, uneven, carved not for beauty, but for meaning. Outside, Alma called the girls to wash up for supper, her voice carrying through the dusk like something you'd follow home. Eamon stepped onto the porch where the table was set. Beans, fresh bread, a meal earned with sweat and forgiveness. Alma looked up. You've been hiding in that barn again. He smiled. Workin'. On what? He set the small object on the table. The girls leaned close, eyes wide. A ring! June gasped. Alma frowned slightly, lifting it. The light caught its edges. You carved this? Didn't have gold. Didn't seem right anyhow. It's rough. So am I. She tried not to smile, and failed. What's it for? For what's next. For something that don't fade with the dust. She studied him a long moment. Then she slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit snug. Not perfect, but real. Paloma clapped. Mama's got a ring. June laughed. Does that mean you're married now? Alma chuckled. Not yet. Eamon leaned back, eyes soft. Maybe we already are. Just took us a while to notice. They ate under the open sky. The girls argued about who built the better stick house behind the barn. Alma told them stories of her father, how he whistled while drawing lines on maps, how he believed land could hold memory. Eamon listened, saying little, every word stitching something back together. When the stars began to bloom above the mesa, the girls drifted off to bed. Alma stayed beside Eamon on the porch. The night was cool, wood creaking softly. Do you ever wonder, she said, if we're meant to find peace out here? He looked toward the horizon. Peace don't find you. You build it, board by board. She nodded slowly. Maybe that's enough. A train whistle sounded far away, low, distant, no longer a threat, but a reminder the world was moving on. When I first met you, I thought you were trouble, he said. Alma smiled faintly. I was. He chuckled. Still are. She laughed, leaning her head to his shoulder. The wind brushed the porch, stirring sage and smoke. Eamon's gaze lingered on the ring glowing in the lamplight. I used to think this land'd kill me. Turns out, it just wanted me to live different. Alma closed her hand over his. Maybe that's all any of us want, to live different. The stars thickened, silver spilled across the plains. Somewhere beyond the hills, a coyote called, long and lonesome, but not sad. Home looks better with you in it, Eamon whispered. Alma did not answer. She leaned closer, fingers tracing the grain of the wooden ring, a circle carved from survival, worn by forgiveness. The wind carried the scent of rain. Lamps flickered. The world was still wounded, but healing slowly, stubbornly, like people who'd learned the worth of second chances. And as the first drops fell on the dry earth, soft and hesitant, Sable Mesa exhaled, no longer a place of sorrow, but of beginning. Epilogue. A gentle ask to the listener. As the dust settles over Sable Mesa and the echoes of Eamon and Alma's story fade into the quiet hum of the prairie, we're left with something gentle and lasting. It's never too late to start again. If you've known loss, if you've stood on your own porch wondering whether the best days are behind you, let this remind you. Love doesn't fade with age. It deepens. It learns to whisper instead of shout. If this tale spoke to your heart, please like this story. Subscribe to Stay by the Fire for more second chances, and share in the comments what home means to you. We'll be here, riding steady together, story by story. End of epilogue. A beginning.